Hi everyone, I'm back and today I've got someone who I'm really excited to talk to, the amazing, incredible writer Vicky Foster, who some of you may know, of course, Hull born and bred. Vicky, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
So obviously we are celebrating Hull Women's Week for Hull Libraries and International Women's Day, which was earlier this week on Tuesday, yesterday in fact, because today's Wednesday. And people will see this interview probably going out on Saturday. So for you, it was a few days ago. So Vicky, where I'm going to start is your amazing writing. Just tell us a little bit about how you started on your path to being a writer.
So, writing is something that I've always done since I was small. I think probably I discovered this a little while ago. Someone else, I was on a panel with some other writers, and one of them said, I think I really started writing because I just loved stationery. And I was like, that is probably what happened to me.
I love stationery.
Just the process of having nice paper and pens and stuff. But anyway, was doing it a lot when I was small. Really got into it when I was a teenager. But that's a really it's a big cliche, isn't it? Teenagers writing poetry. And then when I had my kids, I stopped completely.
Mm.
And then started again when I was about 30, how old was I? 32, 31, something like that. Just writing at home, just for my own benefit, my own pleasure. And then discovered open mic nights in 2015. I went to Away with Words on Princess Avenue, kind of as a bet with a friend, because she told me that poetry open mic nights were a thing, and she goes to them, and I was like, I'm coming, and I did. And then not long after I started going there, I think it was later the same year, I got asked to do a guest spot at a poetry night, and just went from there. And just once I started doing it, could see other opportunities. People asked me to do things. The more I met other writers, the more I was like, some people do this for an actual job. And just yeah, kept on getting useful bits of information from people and doing my research, and yeah, went from there really.
Wow. What was it like the first time? Because I think that is just the bravest thing to do, get up in a room full of people and read your work, because it's such a vulnerable thing to do, isn't it? How did it feel the first time you got up and you did that in front of a room full of people?
Absolutely terrifying.
Oh, I would be.
And to put it in context, I'd been a pub singer for a couple of years by then, so I'd got quite comfortable with the idea of getting up on stage and singing to a room full of people, but having the music taken away and it being just my words and my voice was a totally different
Wow.
experience. But the flip side of that is that when people came to me afterwards and said they'd really liked it, it was a whole different feeling to the feeling you got from being praised after singing other people's songs at a gig. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So Vicky, for you, do you tend to write in a particular form? So you said that you kind of wrote as a teenager and then you kind of had a bit of time where you didn't do as much writing and then you came back to it, say, in your early 30s. Had the way that you wrote really changed in that time in terms of form? Were you working on poems? Was it longer pieces of work, or was it fragments of stuff in a book? How did it work for you?
Actually, when I started again, it was almost like I'd just picked up exactly where I'd left off. I was writing poetry about stuff that had happened in my life, and that's exactly what I'd been doing when I stopped when I was 19.
Yeah.
So almost like I'd just picked up again where I left off. But I think since then, so that was probably about 2013, so it's 9 years ago now. Since then, it's changed a lot. The way I write has really changed a lot. But yeah, those intervening years, probably because I'd not been doing it at all, it just hadn't changed at all. No, it was exactly the same.
Yeah. And you've had I mean, so me and Vicky, a bit of context on this, are friends outside of this. So obviously I know quite a bit about Vicky's amazing career. So you've had some of the most amazing successes recently. You were poet in residence down Wyfrigate, weren't you? And you wrote this incredible poem about your experiences of, you worked down Wyfrigate, didn't you? Was it Boots?
Yeah, one of my first jobs was when I was about 16. I worked at Boots on Whiteforgate, Boots the chemist. So yeah.
Amazing. And yeah, so you kind of brought into that your memories of working in Boots. But what I want to get to is the fact that you won the Iverson Award for bathwater, which is an amazing experience. And we were just everyone thrilled to bits for you.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I have to say, it was like one of those mad moments. Like we had to go to the radio, what's it called, the radio theatre at the BBC in London. So which was just nuts in itself. Just like I don't know about
Amazing.
you, but anytime I go to London, I like instantly feel like I'm in a film because it was a place,
Yeah.
it was a place I never went to as a kid. I didn't go till I was an adult, and I've been more now, like because of work things. I've been back and forth a bit to London now, but not much, still not much. So I still always get this really like just like a really buzzing feeling to be in London, like I'm somewhere really special. But then obviously going like to that place on that night, like there were loads of famous people there, yeah, people off the telly who I've loved, like presenting awards or getting awards themselves. It was like, yeah, it was really mad.
Did you get that before they announced your name? Did you get that feeling in your belly, like, oh God, I've got a feeling it might be me, or did you just think, no, definitely not?
Just no way. I thought it was going to be me. No way. Testament, who I love, who I've been in touch with recently, he's given me a bit of mentoring on some work I'm doing. He's just brilliant, and he was up for. There was like three of us, and I didn't really know the other woman's work, but it sounded amazing. And then Testament, who I know is amazing, was the other person on the shortlist. I was like, it's nice. I went there just think it's just really nice to be on the list and like be here at this night. And then when my name came up, I was like, oh my God. And like I had, I had this moment where I realized I had my phone in my hand because I'd been just sat there taking pictures of it. Like they put the people who've been shortlisted, they put the names up on this screen. So I was like taking pictures of it, like sitting there waiting to take pictures of whoever was going up, and then it was me. And I was like, oh, I couldn't like I took ages getting to the stage because I didn't know what to do with my phone. And like, no, I was not. I didn't think it was going to be me. No.
Great. And Bathwater was a Radio 4 play, is that right?
That's right, yeah, like an afternoon drama.
Yeah. And so if people wanted to listen to it or buy a copy, where could they do that? It's published through
So
Wrecking Ball, is it?
yeah, so I don't actually think the audio's up at the minute. It like comes and goes because every so often they'll replay it and then it stays on the iPlayer for a while afterwards. But I don't think it's there at the moment. But the book, yeah, Wrecking Ball published it. So if you're in Hull, you can go into Wrecking Ball Cafe, and I was going to say coffee and books, but that's not what it's called. That's just what I think of when I
Just
think
rebranded it.
coffee and books.
Yeah, that's fine.
So you can go in there, they've got it in there, or go on their website and order it. Yeah, you can get it from other places, but I'd recommend going direct to the publisher if you can.
Okay, well, what I'd like to talk about now is your very exciting PhD. And this is something that we've talked about a little bit over the years that we've known each other, which is women's voices in literature.
Mhm.
So I wanted to start and specifically working class women's voices. And definitely speaking as someone who I would class myself as working class, I can honestly say I think I grew up with a real lack of that in literature and I didn't really feel like I was surrounded or there was anything to read that really reflected my circumstances and how I was brought up and kind of how I viewed the world. When I was growing up, my kind of favourite and still to some extent is kind of a female voice was Jane Eyre. I love Jane Eyre. But I never really kind of found anything that really reflected where I was at that time. And I wondered if that was the same for you.
Yeah, definitely. I think like still obviously like my I'm going even more specific than just working class women. I'm studying working class northern women because
Yeah.
if you look for them in books or poetry, they're difficult to find, historically especially. I think I was really lucky that very early on after I started performing poetry, I went to a night in Wakefield called Unity Words that a firm of poets had organised. And on stage, like over a couple of months, I saw Louise Fazakali and Toria Garbutt performing poetry. And
Amazing.
I don't know. I think the journey that I've been on as a writer would possibly have been very, very different if I didn't see them so early on after I started performing poetry, because seeing them talking about things that were really familiar to me about being working class, speaking in the beautiful northern accents that they've
Yeah.
both got, and talking about things that I understood,
Yeah.
felt like it gave me permission to do the same thing. Like I was already doing it, but whether I would have had the courage to do it on bigger and bigger stages, I don't know. I really don't know about that. So I was really lucky that I saw them early on, and then within like a year or so had met Louise Walwyn and Kate Fox, who again, amazing northern women talking about stuff that I understood from my own life. And also like Kate Fox is a brilliant academic as well. She did her PhD on northern, what it's like being a northern performer. And yeah, and I got to work with both of them, had mentoring from them both, and that was really valuable as well. So I like seems to have just been able to tap into this amazing scene and seam of northern working class women writers.
Yeah.
So yeah, but outside of that, outside of those people who I've just named, there are others, but and it's starting to happen more now, but you know, it's a very recent thing. And so yeah, there definitely aren't as many as there should be.
No, I agree. And and I suppose it's a really broad question, but why do you think that is? Do you think it's down to kind of opportunity?
In a large part, yeah. I think obviously, like we know because statistics can prove it, that women still do the majority of work in the household. They still do the majority of unpaid caring work that needs doing. They're more likely to take care of anything child or family related or household related. So we already know that the demands on a woman's time, just from those few things, are already a lot bigger than there will be on a man's time. Obviously, if you factor class into that, working class women, you know, if you've got more money, you might be able to pay a cleaner or a nanny or whatever else it is. But working class women don't have that option, and then because of things like the gender pay gap,
Mm,
like women probably have to work more hours to earn the same amount of money. If you're a single mum and you need to, you know, raise a family and work, then the demands on your time are going to be less. So you get this kind of downward slope of the time that's available to someone. So actually, when do you get time to sit down and write in
no.
amongst all that? And that's just like a very basic overview. There's whole things about you know, if you don't hear voices like yours, have you got permission to speak? Like, I think Fair Story are doing amazing work around that at the minute. Their founder, William Farnes, talks about that in the Fair Story handbook. He talks about the fact that how important it is that we see ourselves reflected in culture. Otherwise, we feel like it's not for us. And that's something definitely I can relate to. Like, I remember when I was at college when I was 18, I went to college about 3 times and dropped out 3 times between like 16 and 19. But one of the times I was briefly there, we did Whitsun weddings. And when the teacher told me that Philip Larkin was from Hull, I mean, strictly speaking, he wasn't from Hull, but he lived in Hull for a long time. When she told me that he, you know, lived and worked in Hull, that blew my mind
Yeah.
because you know, poets weren't people who came from Hull. They were people who came from London or, you know, or the Lake District. They
Yeah.
weren't didn't come from Hull. So I think there's a whole, yeah, it's really complex, but I think that's like a brief, like just some of the reasons why they're quite, you know, quite. I'm simplifying it, but yeah, there's some of the reasons I think.
Yeah. And I mean, you've mentioned so many amazing northern women there. I mean, I remember seeing Toria Garbutt when she was supporting John Cooper Clarke, and there was just this amazing, like, I remember she just walked onto this huge stage and she was just there, and then that voice kind of comes out, and what she's talking about is so relatable and beautiful, and the rhythm of her voice and kind of what she's describing. She's got a beautiful poem, I can't remember the name of it, about the loss of a friend, and she has this gorgeous line that's like, dry as me nana's scones, mate, but just the way she says it. But it's just like, she performed that in front of a room of kids working with here in Scarborough, and the whole room was just still, like could hear a pin drop. And the kids were like, I just didn't know poetry could be like that. We just thought it was like blokes in like ivory towers writing terms of novels. Didn't realise, like they'd never seen anything like that. And I don't think actually until I saw Toria perform that I'd ever seen it.
No, it's amazing. It's just that I love that poem. That's the one about holding an imaginary umbrella to keep you
Oh
dry.
God, it's
It makes me
beautiful.
emotional, Justin. It is really beautiful. Yeah, I think it's like one of the things I'm really interested in is I think we have a really like literature has a really narrow view of what should be admired and what should be celebrated. And I think it's really important that people like Tori doing what they do are talking about experiences that otherwise people might not have considered important. Or if you try to
Yeah,
find a northern woman talking about that kind of thing 100 years ago, it's not going to be there. You're going to
yeah,
get men talking about all kinds of stuff, but you're not going to get women doing that. And again, it comes back to that thing about being able to recognize the value in your own experience. And I think every time
yeah.
a northern working class woman gets up and talks about things like that, it's special for all of us. And you feel it like you felt it, like we're adults. Imagine what it's like for kids hearing that.
Yeah.
Must be brilliant. I wish I could, like Benjamin Zephaniah came to my school when I was
Oh,
at secondary
amazing.
school. I know it was really amazing. We were all like starstruck for days, and it was really amazing. But I think for me, as a northern working class woman, it would have been a next level thing to have someone who talked like me and had
Yeah.
grown up the same way that I had come to my school. That's like, yeah, just it's important. That's why representation, broadly speaking, is so important, isn't it? That's why we need these people from all different kinds of backgrounds to be getting up and sharing their voices, and for people to be giving them a platform to do it.
And that's the focus of your PhD, isn't it?
Mm. Yeah, so my PhD, it's got a very wordy, dry title at the minute. It's the female working class Northern British body as a vehicle for heroism, because
Wow.
heroism is quite an important factor of it for me, because I've got this, and it's something that I had a chance to talk about with. I made a Radio 4 documentary a couple of years ago now, and I had no, it wasn't a couple of years ago, it was about 18 months ago, but I got to interview all these like amazing people, and one of them like is one of the few academics who studied heroism. He's American, Dr. Zeno Franco, and we talked a bit about this idea. I was like, I've got this idea about heroism, that it's like there's so many unseen heroes who are doing things that you don't see, and because we don't see it, we don't celebrate it. And he was like really supportive of that view. He was like, that's definitely, we know this is a something about heroism that we need to look into. It's when we think of a hero, we think of probably something male and physical,
Yeah.
and something that happens quickly in a short amount of time. And actually, like if you think about all kinds of situations, because of the things we just talked about, like the natural oh, what's the word I'm looking for? I should be able to think of words, Chrissy, shouldn't I?
Make it up, Vicky, make it up. Just make up a word.
If we think about the natural challenges that are built into a working class woman's life, then actually we start to get a picture of somebody who is having to work a lot harder
Yeah.
to achieve something even on a par with where men are able to get to, like the effort to get there. I was talking to Helen Mort's my PhD supervisor, and we were talking about this the other day, and she said it reminds me of that Ginger Rogers thing that she used to say, like she's doing everything Fred Astaire's doing, but she's doing it backwards in heels. I was like, yes,
Exactly
exactly.
it. Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I'm focusing on. But it's I'm going to be doing it for 6 years, which is a really nice feeling. So I'm just doing loads of reading at the minute. At the minute, I'm reading about the history of working class writing is what I'm focusing on at the minute, which is really fascinating.
Yeah, that's amazing and brilliant to have 6 years where you can really take your time and completely immerse yourself in it.
Yeah, it's really nice because I've been studying now for I did my degree full time and then I did my master's full time. Took a year out in between, but yeah, and did my master's full time. And I was planning to do my PhD full time, but it's really difficult to get it funded. So I decided to do it part time when I couldn't get funding. And actually, as soon as I made that decision, I was like, I think that's going to be really nice because I can do all the other things I enjoy doing about writing. And do this half my time as well, so literally half of my working day at the minute is reading books about all the stuff I'm really interested in.
It's like a dream, isn't it?
It's honestly, it's amazing, and getting to talk to Helen Moore about it every few weeks. It's like, hello. I can get on board with this.
Sounds amazing. Now, I know we've spoken a little bit in the past about Maya Angelou, because I love Maya Angelou, and she was one of my defining moments when I heard her poem Still I Rise, where I was like, oh, that's what language can do. That, you know, it's just one of those moments you really remember. And I wondered when you were kind of younger and growing up and writing and reading and really getting into literature, who were your female voices that you really admired, or you loved their work, or you just wanted to read everything that they wrote?
The Maya Angelou was a huge one for me. Absolutely loved her. And I read I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings, and then read all all of the because there's about 6 of her autobiographies, isn't there, of her memoirs, autobiographies, and was just blown away. And actually, as I read those as a teenager, and as I have gone through my life and had to face difficult situations, I've always thought of Maya Angelou and all the stuff she had to go through, and
Yeah.
that's the power of books and words, isn't it? Is that so for me, that poem, I've got it on my wall. I don't know if you can see it from here, but it's on my wall in a frame, part of that poem. So having read her novel, her autobiographies, all 6 of them, all those words, this is for me how fiction and poetry can sit so comfortably together. Having read all of those books and known everything about what had happened to her, it's really distilled in that poem Still I Rise. So just remembering that poem can remind you of everything she went through in her life and everything she overcome. It's powerful in its own right, but then when you've read a story and you understand exactly what she has been through and what she overcame and what she's talking about in that poem, it's yeah, I loved her. Really, really love Maya Angelou. Still, yeah, like I say, I've got the poem on my wall. I still watch it. I've loved that I've discovered in the last couple of years YouTube videos of poetry readings.
That's
Like,
amazing.
they're just brilliant. Do you ever watch them? I'm watching Maya Angelou read it herself is that again. That's next level because she's just amazing.
I know, it kind of it puts the hairs on the back of your neck up, doesn't it, when you just hear that voice and the weight of it. And that poem, it kind of says, like you've just said, everything that she's been through, and also just the hope that's in there. It's kind of just like a mantra, isn't it? I look to that poem definitely when I'm feeling, I don't know, just kind of, it puts a lot of stuff into perspective, I think, sometimes, when you're just a bit cross about something that's really insignificant, it kind of widens that perspective, and is just a reminder that actually, it kind of doesn't really matter.
Yeah, she's amazing. So she was a huge influence on me when I was younger, and someone who I read a lot. I read The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath when I was
Yeah.
That absolutely terrified me. It absolutely terrified me when I was about 17. It's such, but again, that's because it's so potent, isn't it? It's just an amazing book. It's
That opening, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it's got the most amazing opening line, hasn't it? That I can't recall, and I really should have.
I can't remember that.
it
I don't
really sets the scene. It's about oh God, I'm gonna have to look it up after this, but yeah, it's got a brilliant opener that it just literally just sets the atmosphere straight off.
Yeah. So, but I mean, this comes back to what we're talking about. Really, the people I was reading a lot were men. Like I loved
Yeah.
Shakespeare. I got to love Larkin as a teenager. I loved Thomas Hardy. Like these were the poets and the novels that I was reading. So yeah, Irving Welsh was Train Spotting came out when I was a teenager. The book and the film. I don't know. I don't know if the book and the film came out at the same time. I probably just discovered them at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, but that's
But
amazing though, because I'd never read a novel before that was written in that way,
yeah,
in that dialect,
yeah.
and the way that you get used to it really quickly. But I remember, because I was brought up obviously in the northeast, I remember around that time playing around a little bit with like writing in a Geordie accent and being quite influenced by Train Spotting, which felt like really like it was pushing boundaries at the time.
Yeah, it absolutely was. And again, that comes back to like discussions about class and dialect. And
Yeah.
I've just been reading about an amazing woman, I'm going to check her name, who her name was Janet Thompson Hamilton. And she was a Scottish born poet writing in like the early 1800s. No, in fact, she was born in the early 1800s, end of the 18th century, around 1800. And listen to this for a story. She had 10 children, five of them before she was 20, and another five afterwards. She couldn't read or write. She was really poor, lived in rural Scotland. And then when she was about 40, she taught herself to write. And then she taught herself to read, and then she started writing poetry, and she got quite successful in her time. But one of the things that people talk about a lot, and I've been reading some of the critics who wrote about her at the time that she was writing, and it's awful. Like the main thing they praise about her, I read one critic who was saying the best thing about her is her manliness.
Wow. Okay.
because because they thought that to be able to write in the way that she does was a male trait. That just she was like transcending what it was to be female, because it was a very male thing to be writing. But one of the other things they talk about a lot is the whole idea that they talk about being able to write politely, which meant write in English and like in this certain register, and being able to write in like Scots dialect. And they were saying if she'd have just written in Scots dialect, nobody would have been interested in what she had to say. But because she switched between the two, she was recognised as someone who was valuable to read, which is like that's awful, isn't it?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's why,
It
like, when
is.
Trainspotting comes out and it's published in that kind of in that dialect, that's why it's so important. That's why people are like one of the reasons why people are like so like why we need to hang on to all that stuff, because it does matter, because that's what people were saying like 200 years ago about her. Nobody
Yeah.
would have read it if she couldn't write in English as well, and that's not right, really, is it?
No, no, it's
And
not.
obviously things have changed since then, but how much is up for debate, isn't it?
It is, and you're right. You've made me think back to kind of what I studied at school, and it is mainly male authors, to be fair.
Mm.
Miss Tennessee Williams, Shakespeare. And I think it's only when I did A-level English, we read a book called Six Women Poets, which had Carol Ann Duffy, Liz Lockhead, um, a few other poets I can't remember, but I remember being like really knocked sideways by that collection of poetry. And it was like, again, it almost kind of, because my parents were very just like, you can't get a job in the arts, you'll never have any money, and that's not a job. That was kind of their tactic. And I think that was the first time I stood back and thought, well, actually, these women are doing it. Look, they've got poems published in a book. I could, maybe I could do that. And it's like you're saying, it kind of gives you that permission to actually think, I can dream a bit further than that.
Well, that's amazing that you could like even think about that at that time, that you were like having those thoughts. That's amazing that you were like
Well,
that was not even a conversation that had happened in my house. We just it wasn't like even at school they knew I used to write poetry all the time. The English teachers loved me. I was like their
yeah.
favourite. I was the only person in my year who got two A stars in English.
Yes, go on, Vicky.
I know I got a special award for that. It was a book of ghost stories.
Have you still
Um,
got it?
yeah, somewhere. I was just looking on my bookshelf to see where it is. I don't know where it is. But yeah, I think it was a book voucher and I bought a book of like Victorian ghost stories with it. But the conversations I was having were like careers departments and my teachers and stuff was that, oh well, if you're really good at English and writing, then you'll be a teacher. That
Yeah,
was like
yeah.
going that direction.
It's
Just
funny,
want even
isn't it?
mm,
It's a really kind of funny thing because even a couple of years ago, I was commissioned to write a play, and I was talking to my mum about it, and it was a play that was based in the Second World War, and her first words to me were, "What do you know about the Second World War?" And that was it. It was just like, no, and it's kind of interesting, isn't it? On reflecting, I guess, how much of support comes from the people around you and your home environment and your background. Because if you're consistently hearing, well, you can't do that, you can't be that, you can't achieve that, then actually probably, unless you're really determined and strong-willed, you're probably going to go, well, actually, if enough people are telling me I can't do it, I'm not. I mean, it just, for me, it's the only thing I could really ever do. I was rubbish at everything else, literally, but words just came a bit easier to me. I couldn't do maths, I didn't understand science, don't ask me about gravity, but words I could kind of start to wrap my head around a little bit.
yeah, it's really interesting. It's like, yeah, for me, it was just you were like a step ahead of me then, I think, when at the same age, because it's just not even just wasn't even something that I would have that I knew was even a possibility. It wasn't like I could think I'm going to be a writer and that's my other thing. My dream that I wanted because I loved writing was to be a journalist at the Hull Daily Mail because that was writing for money. That was like the only
Yeah.
thing I knew of where you could get paid for writing. I just didn't like, and I don't know why because looking back, I don't remember. Apart from Harper Lee, we did To Kill a Mockingbird at school.
No, yeah.
Other than that, I don't think we did any other female authors. But my mum has always been a big reader, so she had books. She had shelves of books by like Wendy Cope. That was probably my introduction to female poetry.
Yeah.
Um, Faye Weldon, people like that, really feminist authors. A lot
Oh,
of
amazing.
so that was my awareness of female writing. But again, it was like never ever did I think in a real life context that I could be a writer. Never.
Yeah.
Just never occurred to me. Just
Wow. That's amazing. We never had any books in my house as a kid. I had books in my bedroom, but my parents, I never saw them read. They were just never bothered at all.
yeah, it's something I don't know why or where it came from really, but my nana was always a big reader, so that's something. I mean, we never had money, but we always had books from charity shops, and I don't know where the, but it's yeah, it's funny really that that came down that line. That's like three generations of us who've loved reading, which, like you say, it's not you don't always find books in
No.
working class households. I don't like generalizing in that way, but yeah, often you don't. And we were, my nana and granddad especially, and when I was younger, very working class, like,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, always had books. Hmm.
It's always a good house if you've got a few books in it, I reckon.
I'm glad you think so. You haven't been to my house yet, have you?
We've got books everywhere.
Yeah.
I know, and I'm sitting in front of this and it looks like it's my house and it's not at all.
It's just amazing that you're in that room.
I know, yeah. So I'm in a theatre at the minute and there's just loads and loads of plays behind me, which is a lovely room to come and sit in and just have a look at them. But I would add that they're mostly male playwrights as well.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I'm not seeing a lot of women on these lists here, so that's quite interesting. I was Carol Churchill at the top, but apart from
Carol,
that,
I just discovered her last year. What an amazing woman. She like, yeah, I read The Man. I'm doing like some of the writing I'm doing at the minute. When I was doing my masters and I'm still doing it, is like playing around with form a lot. And so Sarah Jane Dickinson, who was my supervisor when I was doing my masters, told me to read Carol Churchill, and I read The Man. And I was like, oh, what a brilliant idea! Have you read it? Do you know how it
oh,
works?
I did
It's
a bit of Carol Churchill at uni, but I don't know that one. What's it about?
It's basically a man doing his tax return. That's like the premise of the play. And as the audience are coming in, they hand out like receipts to the audience. So he'll be on stage doing his play. Doing his play.
Doing his play.
The actor will be on stage and there's like a set part that's always the opening that he'll do. And then he'll ask for, has anybody got any of my receipts? Because he's doing his tax return. And some of them he'll just like pick up and they don't mean anything. But there's so many of them, say there's 12 different scenes that are attached to different receipts. So the order of the play will be different. There's like 12 scenes,
Oh,
but you get them in a different order every time it's performed. It's
that's
really interesting.
amazing.
Yeah, I really like that idea. And yeah, I read some of her others and they're just amazing. Like just all this stuff going on and like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, the way she puts things next to each other, just yeah, I loved her. I loved reading her last year.
Just that playfulness as well, isn't it? Just kind
Mhm.
of playing about with stuff and seeing what happens and what comes out of it and taking that time to do that's just really amazing.
Because one of the things I love about poetry is the way you can have these images like jammed up against each other that you don't think would go together and the way you can play around with that. I love that about poetry. So it was a bit of a revelation for me. A lot of the stuff I was reading when I was doing my masters, like started turning light bulbs on because people were doing that in plays and in novels. And I was like, oh, this is really
Yeah,
interesting. So that's the avenue that I went down for my master's dissertation and I loved it.
that's amazing. Oh, Vicky, we could natter for hours, I think, couldn't we?
Yeah.
But
Not could we do.
we do, we do. It has been actually, funnily enough, Vicky and I rescheduled this interview yesterday, but we were so busy talking, our time ran out, so we had to do it today, didn't we? We just got dead involved in the conversation, and we're like, oh God, now it's gone. We're gonna have to do it another day. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me, Vicky. And if you're watching and you haven't heard or read Bathwater, go and get yourselves a copy from Wrecking Ball Coffee and Books.
Music and books, that's what she wrote. Coffee and books is basically what I'm there for. They have got coffee and gluten-free cake.
What more do you want? Go in there, go and buy a copy. It's absolutely amazing. And Vicky, thank you so much.
Thank you.